Walk into just about any business of any size in the world, and to the uninitiated, there can seem to be no organization or purpose at all. All those people coming and going who knows where, typewriters clattering, phones ringing, computers spitting out information, meetings going on. How can people tell where they're supposed to be, how they fit in, what they're supposed to do? Why aren't individuals lost in the shuffle? And more amazing than that, how can the right hand in the company have any idea what the left hand is up to? Especially when you consider that offices and plants might be spread across town, across the country, or halfway around the world. The answer is that defining and imposing order on all this maze of activity inside a company is a formal framework, an organization described by the organization chart. It gives an unseen structure, and it establishes the relationships of business functions and people, what departments will exist and what kind of work they will do, where responsibilities lie, who reports to whom. No business could exist for long without that structure. Hello, I'm Alex Burton, and this is the Business File. Building the kind of company structure we've just seen represented by the organization chart is one of the major responsibilities of managers. They're the ones who have to define the roles and relationships of people within a company. Else, how would employees know whose instructions to heed or who should take responsibility for tackling a job or making decisions? The purpose of today's program is to examine the hows and the whys of building an organization and the importance of creating a structure. The organization managers build is a management tool, a dynamic one, changing with the changing needs of the company. The graphic representing the structure, the organization chart, is not an end in itself, it's a means. It's a way to describe the company structure as it's built. And as the company's aims change, it changes. There's a step-by-step procedure managers use to build an organization. We've prepared a piece that takes us through the organizing process. Creating a business organization is a 5-step process. The manager's first step is to consider and define objectives and plans of the company. They should include the type of product or service offered, the market served, and the profit or return on investment expected. Second is to determine the activities necessary to accomplish the objectives. There are basic ongoing activities every business has, like hiring, training, bookkeeping. In addition, you should note unique activities from manufacturing steps to shipping, selling, and advertising. Once you've developed a list of activities, they need to be classified and grouped into manageable units. That's done by examining each activity to determine its general nature. Most activities are related to one of the several groups, including marketing, accounting, personnel, production. With related activities organized into departments, individuals are assigned to manage them. Then those managers are given the resources and authority to accomplish their tasks. Finally, a hierarchy of relationships is established for the entire organization. That hierarchy is represented by the organization chart. It describes the levels of management from top to bottom in the company, showing the chain of command. The structure also defines the working relationships between groups and the number of subordinates that will be under the direction of each manager. We've just taken an in-depth look at the organizing process that results in an organization structure. Now, we need to cover some important ground to take an in-depth look at organizing, the necessity for it, and the key concepts involved. During the program, 2 guests will be joining us, and I'd like to welcome the first one now. She is Professor Rosemary Pledger, who is standing by in her offices at the University of Houston, Clear Lake. She is Dean of the School of Business and Public Administration. Professor Pledger, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Alex, for coming.
So far in the program, we've seen the importance of organizing, and we've also just seen the 5-step organizing process in action. I'd like to begin by asking you, Professor Pledger, to tell us, what are we trying to do when we organize a business?
Basically, we're trying to organize our resources and our activities to group people that work together. We're trying to allocate resources to these groups. When anyone starts to open a business, then they have to sit down and and make an organization chart, either on paper or at least in their head, to see what activities are to be grouped together, what individuals are to be responsible for those activities, and to design an organization. And I guess a classic example of that is the family itself. When we divide up tasks and resources in our families and in our community groups.
All right, you've talked about the fact that when a company organizes, it is really creating a structure. Now, it seems that this would be a good tool for management if management knows how to use it well. What does an organization chart reveal about that structure?
An organization chart, Alex, is a visual picture of how the organization is organized, how the activities are grouped, who's in position of authority, what is the chain of command, who reports to whom, what products are allocated to different departments, where's the advertising go, the production, the finance, the marketing. The thing it does not show, Alex, is how people move out of those different categories, because we're dealing with human beings, and just because someone is assigned to the finance department doesn't mean they're not going to have lunch together with someone in the personnel department. And this often provides a very good working relationship. And many activities and many decisions and creative concepts come from people coming out of those so-called boxes into the informal organization. The organization chart is the formal working process of the organization. The informal is how it takes place.
Dr. Pledger, earlier in the introduction to the program, we saw that organization structures should be designed to help companies meet their objectives. Well, over time, as companies change and grow and their objectives take different forms, it only makes sense that the way they are organized is going to need to change too. Now, I'd like you to watch a short piece that we've developed to show the types of organizations and how they can evolve to satisfy a growing company's needs, and then I'm going to ask you to comment on some of the points in it. A company has 4 basic kinds of organizational structures to choose from: line and staff, functional, and matrix. The line structure is the simplest form. Authority starts at the top and is directed downward to successive levels of management. Each manager in a line organization is responsible for collecting information and making decisions without help from specialists or staff advisors. This type of structure works best with small companies whose scope is rather limited. But as companies grow, become more complex, there's a need for specialists armed with special resources to take over some of the work. So, a company can evolve into a line and staff organization. It's designed to give management help from staff specialists, people in departments with the resources to give expert advice. In this structure, staff personnel may have some authority to make decisions on specific activities of workers in different departments, but not the authority to give orders. That authority still rests with line managers who make the decisions for their departments. If a company feels it needs specialists in positions of authority, they can turn to the functional organization. In this case, decision-making is put in the hands of several different managers who are each experts in a particular task. A worker or group of workers whose job calls for several different tasks would have a number of managers to report to. That puts experts responsible for jobs, but it can also cause confusion and conflicts. So the functional organization is seldom used. However, the final structure, the matrix organization, is used more and more these days. It is project-oriented. A team of experts are brought together from different parts of the company in order to complete a specific project. For example, people from engineering, accounting, production, personnel might form a project team working together under a manager. Then when the project is completed, the team is dissolved and members sent back to their original departments. Now, Dr. Pledger, we've just seen an explanation of the 4 different types of organizational structures, and I'd like to ask you now about each one, beginning with the line organization. Why would you use that type of structure?
Well, the line organization is the oldest. It's the easiest, the least complicated. And it's the military concept, the chain of command, subordinates reporting to the superior, nothing in between, directives going down, responses coming back, suggestions coming up, going backward. So the line is, it provides for efficiency. It's very effective. There's no in-betweens.
All right. What about the line and staff organization? Why would a company use it?
As companies grow, and any small company continues, pretty soon they need to look for some staff people. We generally think of staff as being someone with a particular expertise. Most small companies, their first staff person to hire is an accountant, or then a lawyer, or then maybe a personnel individual, because the company has grown so that they can't handle all their functions, or if it has not grown even, they find out that even though they're the owner of the company, that they are not experts in that field. And so they need professional help, technical help.
So now we come to the third type of structure, the functional organization. Why use it?
The functional organization is where the organization is in essence divided up into functions. It may be divided up into purchasing, production, personnel, and the poor worker has as many supervisors as we have functions.
So, if I were a worker in that type of organization, I'd have a number of supervisors to answer to for different things I did in my job. Not hard to see how that could cause problems. But what about the matrix organization? When would you use it?
The matrix is for project-oriented activities.
And so how is the matrix structure designed to handle projects for a company?
You may have 5 or 6, 7 or 8 going in the company. These are many companies within the organizational structure. And so you pull off your experts and put them on the project. You may pull off a finance person, an accounting, and a marketing, and say, we're developing a new product. And so you will be operating in this matrix organization. When the when the project is completed, they go back into their so-called line organization or line and staff.
Excuse me, Dr. Pledger. You'll remember I said that earlier in the program we went through the 5-step process that's used to create an organization. And what we've shown to this point is that a company's organization type changes based on the company's objectives. Now, our research for this program shows the internal structure also changes. How a company chooses to group the activities or departmentalize can differ based on what the company is trying to accomplish. And we've prepared a piece that shows this. After seeing it, I'll be coming back to you for some help with more questions. While creating and managing a business organization, management has to make decisions about how departments inside the company will be structured. There are 4 departmental types: functional, geographic or territorial, customer, and product departmentalization. The most commonly used of the 4 types is functional departmentalization. For most businesses, it's a logical way to set up departments because it groups activities under the major headings most all businesses have in common: finance, production, marketing, and personnel. With a company structured by function, lines are clearly drawn between activities, so it is clear where responsibilities lie, which helps assure the same job won't be duplicated in different departments. Geographic or territorial departmentalization groups the activities and responsibilities inside a company according to geography. A national firm, for example, might have separate organizations over different regions of the country. One reason might be to take advantage of favorable conditions in one area, like labor and material costs or tax incentives. Another major reason is to locate business activities near customers so they can be served quickly and efficiently, and that's why department stores like Sears and JCPenney have regional divisions. If a company has products or groups of products that each require a unique marketing strategy, production process, distribution system, or capital resources, it will probably turn to product departmentalization. Almost any retail store is an example of a business organized by product. It has separate divisions for each type of merchandise. Produce in one department, baked goods in one, frozen foods in another. Product departmentalization puts all the activities of creating, producing, and marketing each product into its own separate department. The advantage is that people in a department can direct their attention, energy, and resources toward the success of a particular product. A company whose emphasis is on marketing to different customer groups might build an internal structure based on customer departmentalization. Take a firm that markets its products or services to government agencies, retailers like Sears and Ward's, and also to hospitals. Those groups of customers, though using the same products, have a different set of demands and preferences. Customer departmentalization would give you the flexibility to focus on their particular needs. We've discussed the 4 types of departmentalizations separately, but in reality, one type does not exclude another. It is not uncommon for 2, 3, or even all 4 types to be used together in the same company. The manager's aim is to create departments that make the best use of people and other resources to meet a firm's plans and goals. Dr. Pledger, with that explanation of structuring departments inside a company, we've covered 1/2 of the organizing story. We've talked about the activities and how they group them, but that's not all that's involved in organizing. Management also has to define the authority relationships between activities, and that's what I want to discuss with you now. And I'd like to start by asking you about that word, authority. Now, in terms of a business organization, what do we mean by authority?
Authority, Alex, is what the organization gives you. They gives you the right to make decisions, to allocate resources, to make decisions and to carry them out.
Okay, now, 2 questions come to mind. Where does a manager get authority, and what does it allow him to do?
The position itself, not the person does not have the authority, but the position gives you that. And so if you're a person in authority, then you can issue directives or you can ask for suggestions, either one, but you're the one that can initiate that. You also have the capacity to regroup the resources, to allocate them different ways. You can say, we're going to spend so much on salaries, we're going to spend so much on travel, we're going to spend so much on even professional development of our employees. But the authority gives you the right to make those decisions.
Excuse me, but I wanted to ask, is there more than one kind of authority? Do managers have different kinds?
Yes, there is the line and the staff and the functional.
3 kinds. Would you explain the differences to us?
Line authority is 1-to-1. You've got the boss and you've got the workers, and that's very clear and direct. And that's the chain of command is very clear there. A staff is where the staff people give advice. They're not really, they're not decision makers. They're in an advisory capacity.
Okay, excuse me again, but where would we see this staff advice or authority in action?
We may need that in the personnel function. We may need it in the legal function. We may need it in the accounting function. But it is to give advice to the organization that these are the things that should be carried out.
Dr. Pledger, you've discussed line and staff, but I believe you also mentioned functional authority. What is it?
The functional authority then has to do with the assignment of a particular task. You have the authority over that function. And your functional authority might be purchasing, or it might be advertising, or it might be distribution. But that is your particular function, Alex. You might be assigned to be in charge of that particular function.
Are you saying that with functional authority, a manager or department has authority over a function no matter where it's practiced or takes place in the company? For example, the personnel department might have authority over the interviewing processes used for all new people being hired in the company, no matter which department they're going to be working for?
Yes, there is.
All right, let's continue to use personnel as an example here. Tell me, why would we want to have that department dictate hiring practices to all other departments in the company?
Because then they can keep up with all the EEOC and situations and all the federal guidelines.
Okay, Dr. Pledger, we now have a good picture of what is meant by authority or having authority in a business organization. This seems a good time to ask our second guest to join us. He's Walter Heumann, Chief Operating Officer of Hunt Oil Company, and he's joining us from his offices overlooking downtown Dallas. Mr. Heumann, thank you for being with us.
Alex, I'm glad you're here and looking forward to the discussion.
We've been talking for the last few minutes with Dr. Rosemary Pledger at the University of Houston, Clear Lake, and I'd like to direct my question to her. Dr. Pledger, we're talking now about managing the organization once it's been built and put into place in the company. Are there any principles or concepts that management can employ to make the organization function in a smooth fashion?
Well, Alex, one of the most popular ones there is the span of control, and that refers to the number of people that you supervise. If you're dealing with professional and highly trained technical people, you can only supervise 5 or 6. If it's routine work, production work, you might be able to supervise 25 or 30. It has to do with the complication of the task. Or you can imagine in a hospital, the span of control, you would not want that to be too large when you're in life situations. Then the other concept is the unity of command. The unity of command is simply the one-to-one relationship between the superior and the subordinate, or between the employee and the employer. I think most people are fairly comfortable with that. It's when they know precisely what they have to do and to whom do they have to respond to. Now, if you don't have unity of command, which means then you've got 2 or 3 people that you have to answer to, and it might even be in functional areas, but it doesn't give you the cohesiveness that a unity of command would.
Walt Heumann, tell me, how do those 2 concepts, unity of command and span of control, affect the way Hunt Oil is organized?
Well, we organize our company such that there is one individual clearly in charge for a given area of responsibility. The people who report to him know that they report to him and know what area that they're charged with responsibility of implementing certain tasks. In terms of span of control, it's important that that manager not have too many individuals who report to him, for the simple reason that when you've got a lot of alligators in the swamp, if you get too many there, that manager can't do an effective job in killing them all. And so we want to balance that out. There's no magic number. Sometimes it's 3 if it's a very complex activity that his subordinates are dealing with. Sometimes it could be as many as 8, 10 to 15, but that's the unusual.
Dr. Pledger, I'd like to expand our conversation a bit by asking you about delegation. Tell us, what's meant by it?
Well, Alex, delegation is where you delegate your authority downward. Depends on how many levels you want to go. You cannot delegate your responsibility, but you can give your authority to someone to make decisions for you, to allocate resources, to hire, to fire, to make policy decisions.
All right. So a manager gives some authority to other people, but without avoiding any personal responsibility. How is delegation of authority used to make an organization more effective?
It's hard for one person to be on top of everything in an organization, and so you have to rely on your staff, and it's how far you want to delegate that downward. And then, of course, you have to assume the responsibility for the decision, but if it's within policy guidelines, that's easy to do.
Walt Heumann, you heard that description of delegation. I'd like you to tell us, why does management delegate?
A number of reasons. Management delegates, number one, because you want to spread the workload. The person that does it all is doomed to failure, in my judgment. Secondly, you delegate to give the other person, the subordinate, the ability to develop his or her career and expand the horizons and make mistakes. That's very important. And unless that manager is willing to do that, how is the subordinate to grow? There's another reason, and that is that if you've ever been in a situation where your supervisor has kept too much of the action to himself, it's very debilitating. It's not challenging. And, I get all the menial tasks, and my boss gets all the exciting things. And it's counterproductive from a kind of philosophical standpoint. So we want the employees to really feel that they're very much a part of the team. Don't be overbearing on the hierarchy or the organization chart, but nevertheless delegate as much as possible and continue to play that string out and make sure that subordinate has as much responsibility as he or she can take. And sometimes you over-delegate. But I'd much rather opt for that rather than too tight a centralized control, which thwarts enthusiasm. And quite frankly, there's no manager that's smart enough to really have all of that information at his possession and make the right decisions. The best manager, in my judgment, is the one who gets terrific people, who works with them, motivates them properly, and lets them do their thing.
So, managing an organization is not a one-man show. It's a matter of a manager in charge getting help from people under him. Dr. Pledger, I want to thank you for your comments and for being with us today.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate being on your show.
And Walt Human in Dallas, I want to thank you for taking time from your schedule for us.
Alex, it's been my pleasure, and come back again. Look forward to seeing you.
The organization structure of a business is not an end in itself. It's a tool of management. Managers have any number of choices on how to organize a business overall structure and internal structure, as well as a choice about how to use authority. The challenge of management is to develop an effective organization and then to keep changing it to meet the changing objectives of the company. I'm Alex Burton, and this has been The Business File.
The preceding program is part of a college credit course.